Hello, guys. How are you? All right, so we're gonna get right into this. This is a course that I've made by myself, and it's been kind of a hard journey to kind of make this and bring it together. I've been working on it for about, I want to say, 6 or 7 months, and I know it's not gonna look like much at first, but trust me, it's not the, it's not gonna be the last version. This is just the first one, so it's gonna be a little rough at first. So the course kind of really goes over horsepower and torque and mastering the basics. Um, my content is copyrighted, so do not steal because I will find it and I will, you understand the point. In this course, you're gonna learn more about the history and of horsepower and torque and how it really came to be. Those two words, you don't really get those insights whenever you start talking at the meets and you start going to car meets and you're just like, man, I'd really love to get to know more about cars, but man, I don't know anything about cars, It's really hard to learn and all the YouTube videos don't really help out and man, I don't know what's going on. And some people want to know more about horsepower and what torque is, and that's important too. Actually, I'm gonna go grab a bottle of water. So just give me just a moment. And we're back. So I know you guys see a boat there, you're kind of wondering what's that mean. So it's meant as a trailer. But we're going to go over kind of like basic calculations. There is a certain formula that allows you to calculate horsepower, calculate torque, and what that really means. A lot of people see on like car numbers and brochures, they're like, this car makes 500 horsepower, or this Toyota Corolla GR, it's a 3-cylinder motor, which is a marvel in itself, that only makes about 300 and something horsepower. Let's be honest, you're not seeing that at the wheels, and especially not on a brand new car. I'll kind of go over that in my series, but just for right now, 90% of the time when you look in a brochure, they're not putting that down to the wheels. It's kind of interesting how all that works, but I'll explain it soon. But back to what we're talking about. Horsepower and torque has certain calculations that computers automatically do whenever you go into a dyno. And what a dyno is it basically measures how much horsepower or torque you're going to put down to the wheels, or how much from your engine is being put down into your tires that you can feel in real time. It doesn't tell you how much is in your engine. It doesn't tell you the exact numbers that your engine makes or specifications of your engine. It just says, this is the amount of force that we've measured that this car can produce, or this bike, or truck, or whatever it is, right? Now, how do they do it for boats and how they do it for marines? And so it's a little bit different. Well, of course, we'll go over that in later courses, and so you get a really good in-depth idea of what's going on. Everyday impacts. So you're towing, your acceleration, and the efficiency of your vehicle. A lot of people was like, man, I get 20 miles per gallon in my car, but a car from 20 years ago gets like 10 or like 13. Why is that? It uses kind of the same motor. It's a 5 liter and another 5 liter. Like a lot of people get confused when they talk about my Mustang and the new Mustangs. They're like, you got a 5.0 in that. I'm like, I do. It's like, man, it's the Coyote. And they're like, wow, well, there's only like one 5.0, and I'm like, actually, there's multiple 5.0s. Chevy had a 305, and then Ford had a 302. And technically, they're both 5-liter motors. Just one's a lot closer to 5 liters than the other. So we'll go into how that's all calculated as well. Maybe not in this lesson, but soon. And kind of like acceleration. Why does it matter? Well, you have certain cars that are really quick off the jump, and then they kind of plateau at a certain amount, and that's primarily horsepower related. Torque gets you started. That's why battery cars are so much faster. EVs, oh my God, they're so fast. And it's because they're purely off of torque. Now, they're not fast on the top end because of how much horsepower they have. So it's kind of difficult to explain to someone who doesn't know anything about it. but it makes sense to me, and I'm going to hopefully break it down to where it makes sense for you. Another thing is that, okay, towing. You'll notice on most trucks, you'll see that their horsepower on brochures, it's a lot lower than their torque. By a lot, I mean like maybe 100, 100 numerical difference. So, you say you got 400 horsepower and 520 foot-pounds of torque in your truck. And you're like, well, that's, it's a towing motor. And so there's different attributes to motors that make them a towing engine rather than a go fast engine kind of thing. Like in a Corvette, you see there's more horsepower than torque. And in some engines, that usually signifies that it's not really a towing vehicle. It's more of a go fast vehicle or daily kind of vehicle where you can just go anywhere with it. It's very versatile and it's not really meant for towing. But do understand that just because your Corolla has more torque than it does horsepower doesn't mean you can go tow something with your Corolla. There are certain specifications and engineering faults that would not allow that, and I don't recommend it because honestly, I don't want to go out and go grab my brand new Corolla and go hook up a trailer and then break it because, oh, well, someone online said that, the torque means, since it's higher, it means I can go tow things with it. No, different vehicles are meant for different uses, and just because your engine might have higher torque numbers than your horsepower does, that doesn't mean you should just go out and tow things. Use your vehicle according to what it was designed to be used for. That's just my recommendation. Performance and racing applications, yeah, so we're going to go over that too. I really like racing. I'm actually kind of building my Mustang right now, and as we progress through this series and as the community grows, I will start releasing updates about the car and what I'm doing to it and how by you guys supporting this, I can also help support my hobby, which is, drag racing. I go out to the strip, so I go out to Bradenton Motorsports Park, right by, I'm sure you know Cletus McFarland. I was actually there when he was doing his Christmas tree race, I believe last year. Nobody really noticed me, and that's good. You guys don't have to notice who I am, but it's a really interesting how all those cars work. And I usually go out on Saturdays because that's a test and tune day, and it's from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. It's like $20. As long as there's no events going on, that's usually when I go. Because when you go out to the track, and I usually go when my buddy is there because then I can get onto the tree area and watch. And it is amazing to see all these different builds and all these different people and how it all correlates to going down the road. Well, just because I like going to the strip doesn't mean I don't also enjoy GT3 racing or Le Mans or NASCAR. I mean, NASCAR you would think is pretty simple. You're going in the left direction and that's it. Well, I don't believe it's that simple. I mean, there's a lot of variables that you have to deal with. Also, yeah, we're spending a lot of time on this, but I would also want to educate you guys on what's going on. Now, performance-wise, if you're trying to go down the line a little bit faster than your buddy, that's fine. There's another link that I have on my page that has, you can email me your goal, performance goal, and what you're going to be doing with the vehicle. And from there, I can build you a stage 1 to stage 4 build sheet. Stage 4 is essentially what it means is just, it's built. I mean, you're going to have one scary car at stage 4 than you're going to have at stage 1. And stage 1's kind of your basic upgrades, and I'll go over more of that whenever you purchase one of those and kind of give you like recommended brands and links to parts that you might need, or it's just a suggestion really. I kind of give you a plan, so whenever someone asks you, hey, what stage is your car? Oh, it's a stage 1, or oh, it's a stage 1, and here's the build sheet. This is what I've got all in my car. I kept it really nice and organized because the more organized you are, the more professional you look. The more professional you look, a lot more people take you a little bit more seriously and know that your passion for cars goes deeper than what just surface value community, the community is. It's a very toxic community, I get it. Real world examples and exercises. Yeah, so we're going to do some examples of calculations. I'm going to go over some. in my rants, and then exercises as in I'm going to have you use your calculator. Hopefully you have one. And we're going to go through kind of how horsepower is calculated, how torque is calculated, and what that means going down the road. Also, I'm building a calculator so that way you can use it for your own vehicle. We're going to start off with Camaro transmissions. We're going to start with Dodge, Camaro, and Ford transmissions, and we're going to do the Mustang, Camaro, and the Challenger and Charger transmissions first. We're also going to be adding the TH400, TH350. We're going to add a couple more high-performance transmissions. Tremix we're going to start adding here soon. So what it basically is you're going to go through and you can add a transmission, and then you can input, the transmission gear ratios are going to be already done. And so you're going to figure out what you're geared out to, and then you can go ahead and put in how much horsepower you have, how much torque you have in your spreadsheet, or if you just want to play with numbers and say, if I have this much horsepower but I got this much torque, how fast am I getting to the quarter mile, or what's my 0 to 60 times, and what's such and such. So you can play around with it. It's like a playground tool. It's gonna be like $30 a month, and it's gonna be like a recurring licensed subscription, just so that way I know that nobody's gonna try to steal it, because that's software and I've spent a really long time on trying to develop that. Going into the next slide. So that was weird. I don't know what happened there. But right into this slide, why understanding horsepower and torque matters. Building a smarter and better vehicle, what that's going to do is your preventative maintenance, essentially. You don't want to slap a turbo onto a car that can't handle a turbo. You don't want to slap a Rowley cam on something that's going to destroy your valves in an instant. You don't want to, just because someone says, oh, you should totally put this part in your car and it's going to make it so much faster. You listen to that person, and then something bad happens to your car where your drive shaft or axles, you go to the mechanic and they say, well, your axle snapped, or your torque converter gave out because there's too much power, or your transmission is liquid now. Not saying that by just adding a cam you're going to have that, or adding an air filter or bolt-ons, that's going to happen. But what I'm saying is that you don't want it to happen when you're like, well, I did all my bolt-ons, I'm going to go put a turbo on, and it's going to be great. It's going to perform amazing. It's going to be fine when you first start it up. By the time you hammer on it and you beat on it just a little bit, your transmission's going to say goodbye. Everything, all the parts are going to say, hey, we don't want to work anymore. And that you don't want to do that, right? So understanding horse and torque, very important when you start to go build a car. Why this would matter in diagnostics for your car is, well, when you become a mechanic, from what I've heard, and from other people that have gone to school for this, I've just been working on cars my majority of my life, it's more or less always diagnosing, because the customer never really wants to fix the expensive stuff. Even though it should be fixed, a lot of people don't have the money to fix their cars, and that's okay. There's a very small group of people that can afford to fix their cars, and if you believe that you're part of that group, awesome. Stage 4 builds are not really meant for the people that can't really afford to modify their cars. I don't recommend it unless you really you can afford to turn your car on fire and rebuild it fresh and be just fine. But if you want to do it, hey, by all means, your money, not my problem. So do it. Plus, it's always really cool to see a fully built out car. But diagnosing your performance issues a little bit faster is you're going to be able to, not only through these courses, you're going to also understand what part it is that's making the noise, why it's making that noise, how to fix it, and then you can go from there. I mean, it's not really difficult to really understand a vehicle. Once you like understand all the moving components, once you understand all of the how it works all together, when something doesn't work, you start going like, huh, all right, well, let me go check. And so you'll check and check and check, and then by knowing every part, you're like, okay, I know what it is. Because you know it. Because you already know what these sounds come from. You already know where these problems would occur. Or performance issues, right? Your car is not bogging down. When you press the gas, it's bogging down. Why? Well, could be a few reasons, and being able to notice why, horsepower and torque really matters for this isn't crucial. It could be a number of things. It could be your air filter, it could be your fuel, it could be combustion, it could be something else completely. By just knowing this, you would be able to diagnose it just a little bit faster, and you don't feel like the mechanics, when you say, hey, I need this replaced, they're not going to sit there and say, we're going to take advantage of you. You don't want that. You don't want someone to take advantage of you, and then you sit there and spend $2,000 or $3,000 on a vehicle that's not even worth $2,000 or $3,000, but you spent that extra money because someone told you because you didn't know. That's what I really like about cars. Like this lesson might go a little bit more than just horsepower and torque, and that's good. At least I can tell you guys more information because I really want to educate people. A lot of people don't really know a lot of stuff. But anyways, on to the next is gain a competitive edge in racing and in your builds. So, of course, if you know your car and you know exactly what it can do and what you're at each gear point where you should shift and where if it's not automatic, what if you have a power glide or whatever, go ahead and get yourself situated in what you want to do for your race. Great. It's nice to have an idea of your horsepower in a corner. If you're racing a car, it's really good to have that know-how of why your vehicle does certain things. It's important. It could cost nothing to know it, but it could also give you an edge as I know when to brake, I know when to accelerate. I know that if I accelerate too soon, the rear end of my car is going to slide out and I'm going to crash. I know that if I give it not enough, I'm going to be lapped and people are going to pass me. And that's not really something you want to happen, especially if you're trying to go for first place. I know a lot of people like to win, and I like winning. So the last thing I would want to do is not know my car and be shown up by someone who knows their car a little bit better than I do, which would suck for me. No one else, just me, right? And then in building, like when you build your car, it's a new sense of pride because you didn't go out and have a shop build it for you. You sat there, put in the hours, and you learned how to do it. You think I know how to just work on cars because like, I didn't go to school for this. I went out and I bought motors and I broke them down and then I rebuilt them and here we are. And after doing that so many times and wanting to do that and work with other people that also do that, you start to learn, wow, it's a new sense of pride to be able to work on your car, and it's an amazing feeling. So I wanted to share that knowledge that I also know to you guys because at the end of the day, dude, it's amazing. It's a great feeling. It's a sense of accomplishment. And right now I'm working on my Mustang, which as we progress through these lessons, I will also show with you how my car has been doing. And you can join a community chat. I do have a community chat on Gumroad. We can all converse and share our builds. And really, if you had any questions for this course and you think that I talk too much, which is fair, I can talk a lot. I get it. But it also helps to make sure that I explain in normal terms what this all means. But if you have any questions, again, just go ahead and shoot me a message in there or personally email me, and I'll go ahead and reply to you as soon as I can. Since my email is tied to my phone, anytime someone sends me an email, I see it. I don't have that on ignore. I find it very important that I respond to you guys as fast as possible. That's just a signal of respect. If you respect somebody, you try to respond as fast as possible. But do understand I am also a living person, and I work a full-time job, and I do this on the side. So moving on to improved driving and towing knowledge. Yeah, well, if you know how much your vehicle puts down to the wheels, and you know how much torque you're putting down to the wheels, then you know how much you can pull. Because there's a formula for that too. Believe it or not, this shit's amazing. I love it. You're going to notice as you drive your car, if you're just getting into cars and you notice that when you press the gas and it doesn't go anywhere for a little while, and then it just woo, and then it picks up, you might have an issue. But it's okay. Some cars are like that, some cars are not like that. Your car shouldn't be like that, but sometimes it happens, and that's fine. Towing knowledge. When if you know what your car pulls, great. If it just pulls just enough to move your car, don't put a trailer on it. That car is going to suffer, all right? You're not going to go as fast as you would without it. Just don't do it. Like I said earlier, just use what your car is intended for on its design. Don't just bolt a trailer onto a Corolla and expect it to pull 3 or 4 hay bales, and it's not going to work. Driving. Well, yeah. So when you're on the highway and you know that you're in the fast lane, but there's someone in front of you that's going 65 and a 70, and you're frustrated because, well, the fast lane, the left lane, is supposed to be for passing, and you usually pass people at 75. No more than that. We shouldn't be irresponsible drivers, but I know sometimes some of you like to go 95 miles an hour down I-75. God bless you. Don't know how you guys do that without wanting to be scared that a state trooper is going to come around the corner and say, hey, you're going to jail today. So, more power to you. But when you are in that lane and you see someone and they are, there's a spot in front of them, and you know that there's a car about 20 to 30 feet, and you know the gap between their front bumper and that person's rear bumper is just large enough for your car to fit. I don't mean go cause an accident because your car can just barely fit. I mean, you can go do it, but this is why this matters. So when you go to accelerate, your car usually, if it's an automatic, will drop a gear or two. And what it'll do is you're going to accelerate. You're going to go to your right, hopefully. Go to your right if there's space. I'm not telling you guys how to drive, but what I'm telling you is just this is a scenario. Just assume there's only 2 cars down the road and you. This is a scenario, right? 2-lane road. You know the left lane's for the passing. Great. You know that there's enough space, probably 30, 40 feet. I won't say 20 to 30 because I don't want you guys to crash. But anyways, so there's like 40 feet, and you know that this person's either purposely being slow just to make you mad, or there's something else at play. Drop a gear or two. You're going to go over to your right. You're going to press the gas. You're going to accelerate. No faster than 75. 5 over, that's pushing it. You go a little bit, and you go in front of this person. How are you able to do that? Well, because when you drop into a lower gear, your torque and your horsepower usually increase. Because of the fact that you're at a higher RPM, you're going to have a little bit more torque and therefore a little bit more horsepower. That's going to allow you to slingshot essentially past these people and go into the other lane. And that's ideal. You want to go around them rather than honking or flashing your lights at them, because realistically being on their rear end is not going to do much more than aggravate them and cause them to slow down even more, so further aggravating you. So been there before, let's not do it, but when you go to plan your upgrades and you can do it with confidence, it's amazing because you know now what, I'm gonna put this air box, put a new air box, I'm gonna put a new air filter, a new cold air intake. Cold air intake, really all it does is usually just remove it from the engine bay and move it out to the fender where colder air will go to it. That's what a cold air intake usually is. So it goes into your fender most of the time. Other times it goes to a functional area where there's air that can be passed through. Like in the Dodge Hellcat, there's the little light, the halo light, there's a hole, and it goes straight to the air intake, cold air intake from factory. That's pretty cool. But when you plan your upgrades with confidence, you know that what you're doing is not going to hurt your car, rather it's going to boost up the performance of the vehicle that's already good as is. It's good as is from factory, but you know you can just make it a little bit better. You know, like we all can make it just a little bit better, but that's what that's important for, is that you know that you're upgrading your car, but you're doing it in a way that's not going to mess your car up, and it's going to help your car rather than hurt it, depending on your goal. Right, because you don't want to upgrade your car if you're trying to go for higher, or to maintain your miles per gallon. It's difficult to do that if you're upgrading your car, because you're going to have to use more fuel, and that's going to cause your miles per gallon to go down, usually. So we're going on to the next one. The next slide we're going to go over. So, history of horsepower and torque. When we go into this, it'll be in a couple seconds. So we'll kind of go over the origin of horsepower in the 18th century. So we're talking like the 1700s. It's kind of interesting how this all works, right? So James Watt, he's a Scottish engineer, and pretty good for his time. Well, horses were usually used for hauling coal or grinding grain and pumping water. I should have included a couple of images, but this is like kind of like a coal mine of what what horses would do. So people in that time were more curious on how many horses they would need to do work, or to pump the water, or to haul the coal. And so James was like, what if I could make a term that would help me sell my steam engines? Well, he made an observation, right? The famous story is, like, you see it in the second bullet point, right? But the famous story goes that Watt observed ponies working in coal mines, but it wasn't like a random observation. He systematically measured how much weight they could pull and how far they could walk over time. Well, Watt noticed that a horse could turn a mill wheel of a certain size 144 times per hour. Well, and each turn of the wheel meant the horse pulled with a certain amount of force over a certain distance, right? From these observations, Watt then calculated a horse could do about 33,000 foot-pounds of work per minute, which is a lot if you ask me. That's a lot of weight. I sure isn't, sure as poop know that I couldn't do that. So, horses, especially certain horses, certain breeds, it's actually kind of impressive. Well, then he feels like, well, how much does that mean per second? Well, you just do that. You take 33,000 and you divide it by 60. You got 550. So that's what that calculation comes from. So 1 horsepower is equal to 550 foot-pounds per second. That means a horse that can lift 550 pounds in 1 second. My bad. No, it means how they can lift 550 pounds in 1 foot in 1 second. Or 1 pound, 550 feet, in 1 second, which that's a really fast horse. Understand that's not a real thing, but hopefully you understand that. So what is it? Oh God. Why is it important to know the origin of it? Understanding the context of what this word means lets us appreciate that horsepower is not some arbitrary number. It's based on a real physical work once performed by animals. And you'll notice as you go into the history of cars, when you start to look at Henry Ford, they went from horse wagons to now using his wagons, essentially, Model T and, all that. So instead of using horses as a main way of travel, now we have gone into wanting to use a vehicle that's operated by a motor. As it became a standardization of power measurement. Before Watt, there wasn't a precise way to quantify mechanical power, as his definition allowed engineers, inventors, and industries to compare engines, design machines, and size equipment properly. So that way that you would know, oh, well, I need a 5 horsepower motor for this fan. If you're an electrician, you would understand 5 horsepower in a motor for a fan kind of happens. And our motors can be used in many different, uses. Certain motors have several hundred, some of them have several thousand, and that's just how it is. This all depends on your application. It is way too early for me to be yawning like this. But I'm glad I'm doing this. As you would imagine, if you had a unit of measurement and you were like, oh, well, the more horsepower means it's going to sell so much more. Well, of course, it became a marketing and it adopted into into horsepower as a sales tool to help customers visualize the benefits of steam engines over animal labor. One, it saved a lot of horses, and two, now instead of animals, you're using a mechanical device to do the work for you, so that way you can, release the animals to not work and to just kind of play, I guess. It's kind of like he was an innovator of like sorts. So we're going from not making and we're making from animals working to now machines working to now we can make this machine a little bit more efficient. And as they re-engineer and make it more efficient, we start to build on motors and it really just comes back down from steam engines, because steam engines were the primary source of horsepower and torque, and understanding that from our locomotives to cars. After Watt, it just become a standardization across different industries, and it's a very consistent standardization. Horsepower remained as a standard for centuries. Even now, we use it for cars, engines, turbines, and electrical motors, as I said earlier. Knowing its origin really just helps avoid confusion about what it really represents. Like, you don't say, oh, this motor can do 5 horses worth of work. Huh? Nobody's gonna understand you, because it's not standardized in our society anymore. I know we just use horsepower because it's our standardized unit of measurement, and we can say thanks to James Watt for that. It helps us connect history and engineering, and this is what I like to explain to you people that don't understand engineering or don't understand really this kind of aspect. It's like a really great reminder that engineering is both technical and practical, because Watt's insight was as much about people and communication as it was about pure science. In real essence, like the origin of horsepower is important because it connects historical engineering solutions to modern technology, and it's a perfect example of how a good measurement system and a little bit of marketing genius can transform other industries. You're not looking at just automotive, you're looking at a whole bunch of other. Torque. Torque as a concept comes from classical mechanics and physics. Really what it means is like the twisting force of something. So, as you read the screen, you'll also notice like water pumps or water wheels. Kind of like how we were talking about horses pushing a wheel around. Well, and you know, it's important to know this. Because when you go down to the third bullet point, you get there, you don't understand what that means. Well, usually, this is how an engine would work, is that, let's just go with the front mounted engine first, to not complicate things and so your brain can understand it. Your crankshaft's going to rotate in a clockwise direction, looking from the back. Okay, it's gonna go to the right, rotating, and when you go to the front, it's gonna go to the left. When you go to the back, it goes to the right. It's weird. It's just like a clock works. If you were trying to clock around, it would be going to the left, and then you turn it around, it would be going to the right. Yeah, that's true. So your crankshaft will be rotating. Well, that's dependent on a whole amount of different forces and stresses. Well, as that gets converted down to your flywheel usually is what is connected to the starter. Your starter is usually what starts your vehicle. Okay, it's just going to rotate your flywheel, cause compression, fuel's going to be dumped, and you're going to have ignition. It's usually what happens, right? So, as you go down the line, your drive shaft, and well, there's an image on the next slide or 2 slides over. You're gonna find that a drive shaft looks completely twisted, and it's solid steel or it's hollowed out steel, and it just got twisted like a Tootsie Roll. Can't happen. I will say it's not a fun experience when it happens. I'll be honest, because it shortens everything. But it's important because it's the reason why diesel trucks can tow 10,000-pound trailers with ease, and why electric supercars like the Tesla Plaid can launch, or a Tesla Roadster can launch from 0 to 60 in under 2 seconds. It's actually kind of insane. That's just the rotational force, and when that rotational force is sent directly to the wheels, and there is no lag of going through drivetrain components, it's just like 1-to-1, you have a really fast vehicle. And but when you talk about like a diesel truck, 10,000 or 80,000 pounds, those trucks are meant to haul weight. They usually have a significant more amount of torque than they do horsepower. And that's the reason why, is because it's meant to haul really heavy things. And it's supposed to be able to do that without breaking itself in pieces. But then again, everything else is out and engineered around that motor. So that's something else, right? It really just comes down from like we're going to read through the first bullet point. Torque as a concept comes from the classical mechanics and physics. It describes the rotational or twisting force around an axis, and the word torque itself comes from the Latin word torquere, meaning to twist. It's about as simple as I could get it. But yeah, that's where torque really comes from. Ancient times to physics, the concept of torque has roots going all the way back to ancient engineers and mathematicians like Archimedes, who studied levelers. His famous principle. Sorry, that was someone's name. I probably butchered it. Got to make this version a little bit better later on, but I'll fix it. Give me a place to stand, and I shall move the world. Well, the modern formalization, the formal term for torque comes from the Latin torquere, meaning to twist. It started gaining rigorous definition in physics in the 17th to 18th centuries as significant scientists explored mechanics. Isaac Newton laid the groundwork for forces and motions, and scientists like Euler and Lagrange advanced rotational dynamics by defining math around rotating bodies. The modern physics definition is torque is equal to force times lever arm distance. Torque is measured in pound-feet or Newton meters. So when you look at torque specs, that's kind of what it means. You take a bar by a certain amount of distance, and it takes X amount of time to get, or X amount of twists to get to that torque spec. 1 pound-foot of torque means applying 1 pound of force at the end of a 1-foot lever. You know when you look at breaker bars, if you ever know what a breaker bar is, what it is just a really long steel bar that has a little like 1/2 inch drive or 3/8 drive or 1/4 inch drive at the end of it, where you step a socket and you put it on a bolt and you go to twist it, either to loosen it or to tighten it. Either way, a breaker bar is usually meant to loosen something, and if it doesn't snap off, you can't fight a bolt if it's liquid. That's my solution. I just heat it up really hot to where it just turns into liquid and just falls off. That's my solution for almost anything that pisses me off. But anyways, only for cars. Anything else? No. Why it's important. Mechanical advantage to it is that torque explains why using a longer wrench makes loosening bolts easier. You actually develop more torque on a longer wrench than you do at a small one up close. That's why it's really hard with a really small wrench to loosen some bolts rather than a really big one. And it's just like, boop, done. You're like, what? That's so easy. Well, because you exerted more force with the longer lever than you did with the smaller one. Sounds interesting, right? But that's physics. There's a rotational motion with it. It's essential for understanding how engines work, gears, and turbines, along with wheels. When it comes to vehicle performance in automotive terms, torque is crucial for acceleration and pulling power, especially at lower RPMs. Revolutions per minute. That's what RPMs mean. Your everyday life, from opening a jar lid to riding a bicycle, torque is quite literally everywhere. Horsepower and torque often get discussed side by side because they are closely linked. The torque is the twisting force, and horsepower is how quickly work gets done using that twisting force. That's why it kind of ties into horsepower. That's why it builds upon that. Engines can produce torque first. Horsepower is how fast they can deliver that torque over time. So over a period of time, how fast can 700 horsepower come out? Well, there's a calculation for that. That's what I love so much about this course, is I get to talk to you guys about that. In a nutshell, basically, torque has ancient roots and in physics of levers and rotations, but it's a modern definition that lets us precisely calculate the twisting forces that drive our machines, vehicles, and tools. It's one of the most fundamental ideas connecting everyday life to engineering marvels. That's what I love about this course, and I get to talk to you guys about, because I love this stuff. Evolution over time. So we have a steam engine on the left, battery in the middle, and an oh so beautiful engine on the right. That's kind of what I mean, like instant torque. You're gonna see in the middle how you have those two battery motors in the front and the rear, and then you have the battery pack on the floor. Well, this helps with the center of gravity. With it being so low, it's really hard to topple over. You'll notice as many Teslas pass the topple over kind of exam in the crash test because they don't really topple over. It's really hard, actually, because of how heavy that lithium-ion battery is. From steam engines to modern vehicles, horsepower and torque still the core of power measurement. There's nothing really that's going to replace that. I mean, you do have Newton meters to measure torque. You also have kilowatts to measure power in Europe. I'm talking about an American unit, so horsepower is usually our unit of measurement. Enabled, yeah, hold on. That has enabled faster, stronger, and more efficient machines, a foundation for both gas and electric performance. Yes. So you at the left you have a steel-wheeled steam engine, still great, runs off of coal. You have in the middle you have lithium-ion batteries, has almost zero to no emissions, but to manufacture, well, I just encourage you to look up how much lithium-ion batteries need to have a car, or how much Tesla needs them, and then what's the carbon footprint of mining them. And you'll have your true answer about how efficient those vehicles really are. And then on this side, oh, I love this car. But we're gonna go on to the next. We have basic calculations next. So our calculations comes in for what I was talking about earlier. There's a formula for horsepower, there's a formula for torque. Defining horsepower. See, horsepower is equal to torque times your RPM divided by 52. Why? Well, 5252 is a mathematical constant, and if you look at a dyno chart, every time, you should see the torque and the horsepower meeting at that point. 5,252 RPM is where horsepower and torque always meet. Alrighty. So let me see if I can pull up an image of a diesel of a Cummins dyno chart. Okay. Let's see. Okay. If you go and look up a Cummins or Duramax or Powerstroke, you'll notice that the curve for torque and for the horsepower never intersects because they never go over 4,000 RPM. And that's simply because if you look at a, say, for example, a Z06, because those are beautiful cars, a Z06 dyno charts, at 5,200, between 5,000 and 5,500, you'll notice that the horsepower and torque intersect. This is a mathematical constant because regardless of what vehicle you have, it will always, 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 always meet at 5,252 RPM. And that means for your hybrid that doesn't go much more than 6,000 RPM, by the time your car hits 5252, you've already hit probably your peak horsepower and probably your peak torque. I'm going to be honest, it probably just dips down from there. My bad. But torque is equal to strength, and RPM is equal to speed. And horsepower and torque cross at 5252 RPM. Like I've said, we'll cover it in the next slide. Defining torque. See, torque can be measured by the force times distance, usually measured in foot-pounds or pound-feet or Newton meters. The core of crankshaft and wheel movement. So, like I said, Mopar memes, they released this photo on Facebook. I found it and I put it in here. I don't own this image, but that's what happens when there's too much torque coming from your engine that your drive shaft cannot handle. That is a drive shaft that has been twisted more than what it can handle, and there's probably something going on with the differential and the yoke and it locked up, or it turned so fast that it completely worked it and then just annihilated it, just twisted it right in half, basically, like a little ribbon. And the core of crankshaft and wheel movement, that's essentially what it is. Now you have your, we'll read the example. Imagine applying 100 pounds of force on a 2-foot breaker bar to remove a stubborn bolt. You're generating about 200 pound-feet of torque. A longer wrench will give you more twisting force without needing more muscle. You understand? That's why people use really, really, really long bars for semi-bolts, because they're really, if they don't have an air jack, not an air jack, but it's an air tool. But if they don't have one of those things, then they're going to use a breaker bar. And when you're out on the field and you're out there on a service truck and you don't have one of those because you don't have an air compressor with you, or that's just what you were given, you were just dealt a bad hand, that's what happens. That's what happens. You have to use a really long bar for it. And sometimes it's just a really long metal pipe that you attach to your breaker bar. I know that I've used rigid and a breaker bar to loosen a wheel bolt. Turns out it was seized on and I had to use MAPP gas to heat it up to loosen it. Happens. Oh well. But yeah, that's what torque is. I mean, and it comes down to your transmission too. So it's very important. Fixed it. These are some examples. So you'll notice that pound-feet times your RPM and divided by 5252 is your horsepower output. So the real-world feel of an engine. If your engine produces 500 pound-feet of torque at 3,000 RPM, your horsepower would be 500 times 3,000, which is divided by 5252, and that gives you 286 horsepower. Mastering these calculations will let you predict how much engines will feel under real-world conditions. Now, 286 horsepower is just your engine. This isn't your wheel horsepower. Okay? To do your wheel horsepower, we'll do something a little bit different. So wheel horsepower is equal to the crank horsepower times 1 minus drivetrain loss. So for drivetrain loss, we usually account 15% for a typical rear-wheel drive vehicle. For a front-wheel drive, it's 10 to 15%, rear-wheel drive 15 to 20%, all-wheel drive is 20 to 25%. And if you convert that down to a decimal, 0.1, 0.15, 0.1, 0.2, 0.25. and that's what you find that your number would be, right? So wheel horsepower is equal to 400 times in parentheses 1 minus 0.15, which is equal to 400 times 0.8 times 0.85, which is equal to 340 horsepower. That's how much horsepower you're actually getting to your wheels. That's typically what you're going to see. That's just what you would to assume. If you were to dyno your motor and then you were to dyno your car, it's going to be different numbers because that's where you're going to lose it. You know, transmission, drive shaft, and differential, and your axles do take up a percentage of your power. Understand that. So say your dyno reads 350 foot-pounds of torque at 5,000 RPM. Your wheel horsepower is closer to 330. That is because you're going to find 350 times 5,000 divided by 5252. You're going to find 333.4. That's your wheel horsepower. So if you have a torque dyno that's only measuring your torque, which I don't know why you would, but if you did, that's how you would do your calculation for that. It also gives you an idea of how much your power is going to actually be whenever you drop your crate motor in. You're like, oh, if this crate motor produces 500 horsepower to the wheels, this is how much I'm going to get. So you have an idea of how much power your car is going to be making. So you're not going to sit there and be like, well, I'm actually not that fast. Or say, I'm actually really, really fast, and then you go line up with someone who actually has 500 horsepower to the wheels, or actually has 700 horsepower to the wheels. Then you're cooked. You're cooked like fried chicken. I had some fried chicken last night, and I'm hungry right now, so my bad. And you can usually reverse that as well, so you can find your crank horsepower from your wheel horsepower. So your crank horsepower comes from your wheel horsepower divided by your, in parentheses 1 minus your drivetrain loss percentage, and you can find your crank horsepower from that. So when you go to do your YouTube, explorations of how much horsepower you have going to this car's crank, or to this person's, such and such, you're gonna find that the Mustangs, if they're not properly broken in, or the Dodges, if they're not properly broken in, severely are underneath what the manufacturer says they are. And then again, your percentage of drivetrain loss could be wrong. It could be more, it could be less. I know for Dodges, they just weigh a lot. That's it. And because of that, they're a little bit slower than Mustangs. Not by much. Mustangs, don't get me wrong, it's a smaller displacement motor. The volumetric efficiency of a Mustang versus the 5 liters over the 6.2 or larger motors from Dodges, yeah, there's a difference. Plus, a Dodge Hellcat has a supercharger, and a Mustang comes stock with nothing. So, hey, there's that. I'm not saying that Mustangs are faster, but if we're adding boost to one car versus the other, I'm pretty sure a Mustang would beat that on the same amount of boost pressure that the Hellcat is running on. And there's nothing wrong with it. Just how it is. Now, to say a Mustang would hold up to it and be under warranty? Probably not. Once you put a turbo on it, I doubt anything's under warranty anymore. But, just saying. But yeah, that is my explanation of that. I will quiz you on it. I do have a sheet. I will have a 15-question quiz on it, so try to write some of this down, and if you need to go back to it, it's always here. Here, solve these from left to right. In the first attachment I send, it's also collected with this. You'll see the answer key. It's ANS_key 1. That's mean attachment 1 for the answer key. and from left to right you'll solve it and check your answers if it's the same that is in there. If it's not, check your answers, go back and see it. Now if you want to go cross you can. I'm not saying I have the answers for those, but if you want to, you can. I encourage it so you have a little bit better familiarity with this formula, and maybe you can even get better where you see an RPM number and you know your torque amount for the vehicle. You're like, oh, I'm making this much horsepower at this point, I'm making this much at this point, and such. So I'd encourage you to do this. This is what makes us interactive and makes it a little bit more fun than just, I'm going to sit here and listen to you for an hour or more and hear you ramble on about cars because that's all you like to do is talk about cars. And to be fair, that's true. I do like cars. But anyways, gear ratios with horsepower and torque. Why this is important. Oh my gosh. So the whole reason why your car moves is because it has gears. And the reason why gears are so helpful is because, well, they either increase or decrease the amount of rotational force you have coming from your engine. How gear ratios affect torque and the horsepower and how it feels whenever you're in the car. Well, torque can affect the rear end gearing. Your torque, so transmissions work in a very interesting way. I'm not going to go into detail about it, but it kind of multiplies or doesn't multiply. So I know that a numerically higher gear ratio for your rear end gears, you're going to feel more torque because you're going to accelerate a little bit faster. As in a Mustang, because I have one, and I use Mustangs a lot because it's the vehicle that I have the most experience with, so I'm going to use that more. As you have a higher number, like 410, and if you drive it in truck, 453, you're going to accelerate a lot faster. In numerically lower gear ratios, and again, 453 could be real, could be not real, but if you were to make one and have a custom grind for it, there you go. Still, point is true. Higher numerically, lower, so it's going to be a higher gear, but it's going to be numerically lower. The ratio is going to need more top speed. So a 373 is going to have more top speed, but it's not going to get off the line as quickly as a 410. So understand that when you go to buy a car, and if you're buying a sports vehicle, if it says the rear gear is a 410, great, you're going to have more acceleration than you would if you had a 373. But if you have a 373, you're going to have more top end than you would acceleration, so you might get, gapped, really. You might get beat on the acceleration, but some way halfway down the line you can catch up to them. You could. I'm not saying you will, but I'm saying you could. So how the horsepower can affect your rear end gearing is that horsepower, you're going to feel it in the long run, right? Because torque is just the initial, and then it's what gets you going. And what keeps you going and keeps you going faster is horsepower. And that's what really matters in your higher end RPMs, your power band. You don't increase horsepower by changing gears. Gears just change how and when you feel the power you already have. Horsepower is not multiplied, only the delivery changes. That's true. A lower gear gets the engine its power band faster, making it feel the car like it's using its horsepower sooner. So understand, just because you have a certain speed transmission doesn't mean you're going to multiply your horsepower by 3 or 4 times. It doesn't work that way. I'm sure you know that. I'm sure you could probably figure that out by just driving your vehicle down the road. But don't use this course as a way of, well, he said it made me go faster because I had because I had a better trend. No, I didn't say that. What I said is it's gonna multiply how it feels. It's just not as you're gonna feel like you're gonna go faster. It doesn't. It's an interesting way of how it works, but I will eventually get you guys some animations and we'll work through this a little bit more into detail as we go through these courses, because there's another one dealing with different parts of the vehicle. Now, why does it matter for general use? This is kind of important. Your everyday impacts, you have torques affects your towing and acceleration. High torque helps with the vehicle start moving heavy loads more easily. That's why semis are great at what they do. It also allows Teslas to take off the line really quickly because, oh, guess what? Instant torque. There is no drivetrain loss. It's just literally motors connected to the wheel, and you say hasta la vista and go, right? So horsepower impacts top speed and passing power. So when you have more, if you have more power, you know that you can overtake someone a little bit quicker, which allows you to get it into those little small areas a little bit faster than what a Corolla or an older Mustang could. It also helps with Camaros and Hellcat owners to, be a little bit faster when they go to accelerate or they want to go overtake somebody. They can because, well, they have the power for it. So let me slow down a bit because I know that sometimes I talk a little too fast for some people. I feel like I've already consumed more than enough of your time. High horsepower impacts your top speed and passing power. That's true. I just went over that. High horsepower allows you to maintain high speeds and pass with authority per sense, right? That's why whenever you see a state trooper running down the highway, mind you, they scare me. Just because we recently got Mustangs, 5.0s, and we also got C8 Corvettes that now have the Florida Highway Patrol livery on it, and now scares me anytime I see it. Also, we have Camrys that are undercovers and unmarked, and it's terrifying. It's a wonderful feeling when you go down the road and someone lights you up in a Camry. It scares you. Anyways, when you make a pass on somebody, usually you have a sport vehicle, usually you're in your 20s and usually you're in your teens, and you think, oh yeah, I'm gonna be this tough guy, I'm gonna wow pass somebody. So I realize you're probably gonna put that on repeat and I'm gonna make fun of me for it. That's fine. Anyways, when you pass with authority, it's like, come on, man, like we're going 45 and a 60. It's okay to go more faster than 45. We'd all prefer it, especially in Florida. In Florida, that's how we are. I'm sorry. I-75, once a cop leaves the highway, it's like NASCAR. It's like everyone for themselves and go as fast as you can. New law has been passed that if you go over 100 miles an hour, you get 30 days of jail time. Just an FYI. Sucks, but it is what it is. It happens because someone hit someone going 85 in a 35. So if you go 50 over the speed limit or you go 100 miles an hour, you get 30 days in jail. But if you do it again, it's 90 days. So don't. Both forces shape the driving feel. The balance of torque and horsepower defines your experience behind the wheel. It really does. You don't want to take a Corolla, slam on the gas, spin your tires, and by the time you hit 40, everything's plateaued and it slows down again. So it means you feel like you have a fast car up until until you get to 30 to 35 miles an hour, and then after that it's just like slowly itching towards like 50 miles an hour or 60. It might take a couple seconds, but you'll get there eventually. But that's really how it determines. It's really interesting how all that works. Understanding your vehicle. If your torque is higher than your horsepower, then your vehicle should be good for towing and off-roading. At least the engine's good for that. But make a competent choice on if you should or shouldn't. Like I said in the beginning of this course, use your vehicle for what it was designed for. Don't use your vehicle for what it was not designed for. Because if you go out and off-road with a vehicle that wasn't designed to be off-roaded, I'm not liable for the damages because I've literally told you now almost 3 times. I'm going to say it again. Don't use your vehicle for what it is not intended for. But I want to. Well, you can want to do it. And if you do it, that's on your own choice. But personally, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't recommend anyone to do that. I don't like driving my Corolla on dirt roads because it's not really intended to be driven on dirt roads. It's intended to be driven on pavement. So try to keep it on the pavement. Competent means an educated choice. Basically, be educated about your choices. Now, if your horsepower is higher than your torque, then you might have a decent sports car or track car, but be careful because not all cars are built for speed, and don't abuse your car because it was built that way. That means for people that want a GT3 RS, don't abuse the car once you get it. You can let her eat, by all means, let her eat, let her breathe, let her, like, rip those tires, do it, but, like, don't be trying to race in a Camry. Like, you just kind of look silly. Unless you've like put performance mods onto your Camry to make it where it can go do track. Like, again, unless your car was specifically built to be on the track or to be a track version for you to be able to go on track days, don't race it. Don't put other people in danger because you want to be cool. That's not worth it. It's not worth the fines. It's not worth the potential danger. It's not worth other people's safety. Understand that just because you want to look cool doesn't mean everybody else needs to be put in danger because of that. Engines designed for high torque excel at towing and off-roading because you have more torque on the low end, and you're going to need that when you're rock climbing or you're trying to get over a mound, or if you're towing something really heavy like a boat, yacht, or hay bales or farming equipment or anything really. You're towing something, you're going to need enough towing capacity to not only carry your vehicle but also whatever else you're towing at a comfortable rate of speed, usually no faster than 55. I understand some people go 75, but that's just other people. That's not what I recommend at all. High horsepower engines do dominate in high-speed racing, autobahn cruising, and performance driving. Now, if you're in Germany and you want to go and race on I think it's Germany, I believe it's Germany. But if you go on the autobahn, don't slow down in the fast lane. For the love of everything that's holy, do not slow down because you will get ran into by like 200 miles an hour and you will die. That is not a threat. That is a promise made to a lot of people who go into Germany. If you're going to the Autobahn, have a vehicle that can go fast. A lot of people go full speed with their vehicles down that road, and their driving instructors are very skilled, and their drivers over there are a lot more skilled than you'd find in America. And I think it's because of the fact that you have many supercar owners in Germany, and there's a lot of like Bugatti testing that they would they would shut down the highway and kind of send it down the highway at max speed. And some people take their hypercars out there because they just want to go down a road where they can go take their car to the limit. A lot of the times, a lot of places in the US, you cannot take your car to the limit because there's just not enough road or there's too many laws. So they ship it on a plane and they fly over with their car in the belly of the plane and they go and race down the Autobahn with their friends who also have hypercars, who also wanted to do that. And by all means, they can. When you have enough money, you can do whatever you want. Pretty much. Understanding these traits will help you choose and modify your vehicles intelligently. Yes, you need to modify the cars correctly and not build them in a way where they self-destruct. You don't want that, honestly. Why does it matter for performance and speed? Exciting parts. Well, racing and performance, torque is essential when it comes to a hard launch and low end power. It becomes apparent whenever you see the wrinkles in drag tires. That essentially just means the rim is moving faster than what the tires can keep up with, and so the wrinkle is like a compression of it helps grip more as it flattens the tire into the surface, helps gain traction so it doesn't slip. And those contact pads are really sticky. Like I almost lost my shoe one time. So, and horsepower keeps you moving at an incredible rate to maintain that high end power band, and that's why top end like top fuel dragsters run at such a high RPM and swallow so much fuel. Traction is torque's best friend. Your vehicle's success depends on your tire width, compound softness, tread design, and surface condition. Without proper tires, even a lot of torque can't be used efficiently or effectively. Like if you have a lot of torque, but your suspension isn't right, if you have slicks on a normal road, you're gonna crash. It doesn't provide any grip. You got to make sure that your car's built the right way. Otherwise, you're just gonna slide all over the place, and it's not gonna make any sense. And you can have slicks on a drag strip, but if your suspension isn't right, you're not gonna have effective use of those slicks. Building for a goal. If you're going to be building your car for a goal, then this course series will help out. It doesn't matter if you're drifting, it doesn't matter if you're autocrossing, it doesn't matter if you're daily driving, it doesn't matter if you're road racing. I could build you a build sheet for your vehicle, no matter what your goal is, and give you links from recommended brands for your vehicle. And also links to parts or to brands. Again, like I said, brands that would help you out. And depending on your location, I can give you recommended shops if you really want to have a shop do it. Just send me an email and I'll help you do that, but that's another cost for that. Let's keep the momentum going. When you go to look we're coming back down to the end of this slide. True builders understand that the math behind the machines don't just help them, but it helps define really what they're doing. Today you didn't just learn the definitions, you level up your ability to read, feel, and master the real mechanical performance behind knowing this knowledge. If you feel any confusion about the topics that were discussed in this slide, or these slides that I have shared with you over the last hour and 20 minutes, please just shoot me an email, shoot me a message. I'll go ahead and respond to you. And again, this is not the last version of this. I'm going to make it better. I'm going to spend more time on it. So as it gets better, I will give you guys uploaded versions and newer versions, so that way you guys have access to the newer versions. If you've bought it once, you have it forever. I'll upload it with newer versions and better versions. And version 2 will probably come out with a little bit more price to it, but we'll discuss that and see what a fair price would be for the next course. But yeah, let's go. So in summary, now you have a solid foundation on what horsepower is and what torque is. You also know how they work together to make your car feel like a track car or an equipment hauling machine. You should now be able to calculate horsepower and calculate torque. You should also now have the knowledge to now be smarter in front of your friends when talking about cars. It's really important because you don't want to sit there and not know nothing. Now it's important. It's like, well, actually, guys, I've learned on how horsepower matters, where it comes from. And if they say they don't care, well, at least you care. You care enough. And you'll eventually find people that also care, and you'll be able to teach them now from this. And if you want to recommend them to this course, I'd really appreciate it, man. And as always, thank you for your time. Not only thank you for your time, but I do want to let you know, attachment 2 will be your 15-question quiz, and attachment 3 will be your answer key for that quiz. The first attachment is going to be the answer key to the little slide that we had over there. Don't cheat on your quiz. I mean, it's going to be attached to it, so I mean, you're going to see it, but please don't. You can try to work through the problems with paper so you have an idea of how it all works together. Also, if you haven't already signed up for the email list, so you can be among the first to know about my next course, I am going to be posting in series about 5 courses, and then I'll be bundling them all together as I go. So yeah, if you would like to have more access to this content, help me review this, and be a contributor to the course, I'd really appreciate it. And lastly, thank you. I mean, your commitment to learning, improving, and mastering these concepts sets you apart from the average driver and/or builder. Knowledge is power, and today, it added a serious advantage to your skill set. As long as you keep learning, stay curious, and remember that horsepower and torque are not just numbers, they're opportunities waiting to be unleashed. I want to hope that as you keep coming back and you keep coming to talk with me and we learn together, that we both make each other better, and that I can't say thank you enough for making this purchase today. Not only to want to learn, but to have faith in me and taking a chance on me. I really appreciate that. And again, if you need more elaborate explanation on anything, please don't don't feel scared to send me a message, send me an email, send me, hey, you could have made this better, or hey, this didn't work out really well. I didn't like how this works. Can you make it a little bit better? I didn't understand this. Can you, I don't mind. Yeah, it might hurt my feelings just a little bit, but that's okay. Honestly, I need to know. It's how I make these courses better for you guys. I want to make this as the best I can. And yeah, whatever I can do to make your life a little bit easier, I would. So please go ahead, let me know. But yeah, I will see you guys in the next one. Make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I will talk to you guys in the next course. Take it easy. Have a good day.